Ever had to walk miles for water? Not just for a fancy latte, but just to have enough to cook or, even drink.
Sadly, that's daily life for millions, and today we're diving into why that is, specifically in Nigeria.
Right. Because it's easy to think, just build more wells. Problem solved.
If only it were that simple. This 2023 study we're unpacking, Water Infrastructure Sustainability in Nigeria, shows it's way more complicated.
And listeners, this isn't some online article. This was published in Water Policy, a legit journal.
Yeah.
Means experts vetted it, so we're getting the good stuff right from the source.
Exactly. And it doesn't just look at whether a water point exists, but if it functions years later, actually serving the people. That's sustainability. And that's where things get really interesting.
So less about leaky faucets, more like the whole plumbing system going haywire.
Perfect analogy. It's about people, politics, money, the environment. The study breaks it down into 6 big categories: the technical stuff, finances, environmental factors, social stuff, politics. Even had institutions themselves play a role. It's a lot to untangle.
Sounds like we've got our work cut out for us. So even with the best intentions, no guarantee a project will work out.
Sadly, no. And often these factors are all tangled up together. Like, you could build a fantastic, top-notch tech, but if the community isn't invested in keeping it running, it's useless.
Just a fancy hole in the ground at that point.
Yeah.
Which makes you wonder, what makes some projects thrive while others fail?
And more importantly, what can we learn from both the successes and the failures? That's what this deep dive is all about.
All right, let's jump in. First up, the technical stuff. Easy to assume it's all about pipes breaking, pumps failing, but I'm guessing it's more than that.
You're right. The study found deterioration of infrastructure is a major challenge, but it's not just wear and tear. Choosing the right tech for the environment is huge.
So not all pumps are made equal.
Exactly. The geology in one part of Nigeria might be totally different from another. Clay soil versus rocky terrain, those need different drilling techniques, different pump mechanisms. Wrong tech for the job, you're doomed from the start.
Like using a spoon to dig a ditch. Not going to end well.
And then there's maintenance, often overlooked, but so crucial, especially for water systems. Lack of know-how, poor practices, those were frequently cited as reasons for failure in the study.
It's like buying a fancy car but never changing the oil. No matter how great it was initially, neglect will ruin it.
Spot on. And that neglected car creates even bigger problems down the line.
Which brings us to our next layer, the financial side.
Right, because even with the perfect pump and a team of expert mechanics, it all falls apart if you can't afford to keep the lights on. The study highlighted insufficient funding budget allocation as a major issue, but it's more nuanced than just there's not enough money.
So it's about how that money is used, where it goes.
Yep. Cases where funding was there, but not used effectively for long-term operation and maintenance. Imagine starting a bakery, but spending all your money on the oven, nothing left for ingredients or bakers.
What good's a bakery with no bread? Speaking of, what about the people buying that bread? The ones who actually rely on these water projects? Does their ability to pay play into this?
You're thinking like a true deep diver. The study found user fees and willingness to pay were crucial to sustainability.
Makes sense. If people can't afford the water, the whole system collapses. But what if they can pay but don't trust the system to actually deliver?
Another crucial aspect the study highlighted. Past failures, they breed mistrust, making people reluctant to buy in even if the price is doable.
So it's a trust issue as much as a financial one. Past experiences, good or bad, have a ripple effect. Shows how vital that community buy-in truly is.
Absolutely. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Those community dynamics are often shaped by factors totally outside their control.
You're talking about things like climate change, right? Hard to trust a water system when droughts or floods can disrupt everything.
Exactly. The study highlights a fascinating link between water scarcity and rapid urbanization, especially in Lagos. As cities grow, huge strain on infrastructure and climate change just amplifies that.
Okay, so we've got aging infrastructure, funding gaps, a changing climate, and a population boom. Starting to feel a little overwhelming, not going to lie. So we're looking at aging pipes, funding shortfalls, the climate throwing curveballs, and on top of it all, more people needing water every day. Makes you wonder, where do we even start tackling this?
And that's where the study gets really interesting, because it doesn't just lay out the problems, it offers solutions, grouped into 7 themes. Like, imagine a toolbox. Each theme's a different tool for building sustainable water infrastructure.
Okay, so no magic wand, but a whole toolkit. I like the sound of that. What's the first tool we're pulling out?
First up is technological innovations and infrastructure optimization. But here's the twist. It's not always about going high-tech. Sometimes the best tech is the simplest, the easiest to maintain locally.
So thinking long-term, building to last, not just for the flashy brochure, makes sense. But we can't just, wish away leaky pipes. What about the financial side of this?
You're spot on. Sustainable solutions need sustainable funding. The study digs into this with its theme of financial mechanisms, monitoring, funding, and partnerships. One big takeaway is the VLUM strategy, stands for Village Level Operation and Maintenance.
VLUM. It sounds a bit like a fantasy creature, hopefully a helpful one. What's so important about it?
Basically, it's about designing projects from day one to be financially viable and locally managed, empowering communities to run and maintain their own water systems, not relying on outside help that might disappear.
Right, because if it's yours, you take care of it. I'm way more likely to clean my apartment if I'm the one who has to live in the mess, right?
Exactly. And the study found community-managed projects tend to be way more successful in the long run. Speaking of the long run, next tool in our kit tackles the environment. The study calls it Environmental Management Strategies, Regulation, and Policy Improvement. Basically, considering the environment from the get-go, not as an afterthought.
So making sure these projects can weather the storms, literally, protecting water sources from pollution, that kind of thing.
All of that could mean choosing locations less vulnerable to floods or droughts, using water-efficient tech, strict water quality monitoring.
An ounce of prevention.
Right.
Yeah.
But even with the best tech and funding in the world, seems like it all falls apart if the people using the water every day aren't on board.
100%. That's why the theme of social inclusiveness approaches, community involvement, and education is so huge. Projects with strong community involvement, especially those led by women's groups, did way better in the study.
That's fascinating. Any thoughts on why women-led projects might be more successful? It seems women are often hit hardest by water scarcity, so they're more likely to make maintenance and conservation a priority. Plus, women's groups are often amazing at bringing the community together, building that sense of shared ownership over something as vital as water.
It's that we're all in this together spirit. Makes a difference between just having water and having a system that everyone values and protects.
Exactly. Moving away from that top-down approach to development towards something that values local knowledge and participation. But even with the best community spirit, you still need solid foundations, right? And that's where institutions come in.
Right, because it's not enough to just build a well. You need the systems in place to keep it running smoothly for years to come.
Exactly. That's why the study emphasizes institutional reforms, governance, political considerations, and capacity building, making sure you've got strong, transparent, accountable institutions to manage these projects for the long haul.
So less about fixing a leaky pipe, more about making sure the whole plumbing system is set up to work properly. Sounds like a tall order, especially in a place as complex as Nigeria.
It's a challenge, for sure, but the study gets into specifics. Things like clearly defining who's responsible for what within government agencies, giving local communities a real say in decision-making, and strengthening those regulations to prevent corruption and mismanagement.
It's about building those strong foundations.
Yeah.
Because even with the best intentions, without them, the whole thing could crumble.
Absolutely. But even with the most solid institutions, things happen. Unexpected challenges pop up. And that's why the next two tools are so crucial. The study highlights the need for both project management strategies and strategic planning and flexibility.
Okay, project management makes sense. You got to have a good plan, a team that can get things done. But what about strategic planning and flexibility? What does that look like in practice?
It's about recognizing that even the best laid plans can get thrown off course. Climate change, political changes, economic downturns, you name it. Strategic planning is about anticipating those curveballs and building in the flexibility to adapt.
So being proactive, not just reacting when things go wrong, kind of like planning a road trip. You wouldn't just hit the gas without checking a map, maybe packing some snacks, right?
Exactly. And even with the best map and a trunk full of snacks, you might hit a detour, road closure. That's where flexibility comes in. You need to be able to adjust, find a new route.
Makes sense. And that seems especially crucial in a place like Nigeria, where the situation on the ground can change so quickly.
Exactly. The study really emphasizes that a one-size-fits-all approach just won't cut it. What works in one community might not work in another. What works today might not work 5 years from now. You've got to be adaptable, resourceful, and always learning from what's working and what's not.
Sounds like a constant balancing act, but an essential one.
It is. It's about tackling this challenge with both optimism and a healthy dose of realism. no silver bullet solution, but by using all these tools, all these approaches, that's how we build a more sustainable water future for Nigeria and beyond.
I like the sound of that. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's bring it back down to earth, back to Nigeria. Can you give us some concrete examples of these solutions actually playing out in communities? All right, so we've got our toolbox, we know the challenges, but paint me a picture. How are these solutions actually working on the ground in Nigeria?
Let's take that idea of appropriate tech, not always being high tech.
Yes.
Study gave this great example. There's a region where the water table is super deep. Traditional wells just won't cut it.
So what do? Everyone just goes thirsty.
Not if they can help it. Instead of forcing some expensive, complex solution, they turn to a really old one, rainwater harvesting. Communities built these low-cost systems, pretty simple, to collect and store rainwater.
Which, during the rainy season, you've got plenty of. Talk about elegant.
Exactly. And, because it's simple to maintain, relies on nature doing its thing, incredibly resilient and cost-effective. Proves that the best tech isn't always the newest, but what fits the context best.
That's a good lesson, no matter what problem you're tackling. What about that VLUM strategy? Any inspiring stories from the field on that front?
Actually, yeah. Study talks about this village where they used VLUM for their water project, community run, and it's thriving. They set it up so each household pays a small fee every month, goes straight into a fund for maintenance, repairs.
So like community-funded water insurance.
Basically. But they took it a step further. They picked some folks from the community, got them trained on basic pump repair, upkeep, so they're not reliant on outsiders if something goes wrong.
Now that's empowerment, owning it, literally and figuratively. Switching gears a bit, what about those environmental concerns? Any projects in the study that stood out, like they really got that piece right?
There was one, yeah. They were building a new water pipeline, and the most direct route went right through this ecologically sensitive forest area.
Ooh, that's a tough one. Water access versus protecting the environment. Never easy.
Could have easily chosen the easy route, but they didn't. They talked with the community, with environmental experts, and actually changed the pipeline route to avoid the sensitive area, even though it cost more.
That's impressive. Short-term cost, but long-term gain, right? They got that true sustainability means the environment is part of the equation.
Exactly. And to make it even better, they planted trees along the new route. Helps prevent erosion, and offsets the carbon footprint from construction.
Wow, going the extra mile. Literally, it's like you said earlier, ounce of prevention. But even with all this, comes back to people, right? That community buy-in seems crucial.
Over and over, the study found that when communities are involved at every stage, from planning to design to running the thing, way more likely to succeed. Makes you wonder why anyone would do it differently.
Right. Like, why wouldn't you tap into the knowledge of the people who will actually be using this every day?
For a long time, it was all top-down. Experts come in, do their thing, leave. But we're seeing a shift, thankfully. More participatory approaches, which just makes sense.
And that gives me hope, honestly. Because at the end of the day, it's not about imposing solutions. It's about them growing from within the community.
Well said. If our listener takes away one thing, it's that. Building a water-secure future for Nigeria, for everyone. It's a big shift in how we think. No quick fixes, but by empowering communities, thinking long-term, caring for the environment, that's how we make a difference.
Couldn't agree more. It's about treating water like what it is, a lifeline. It's a human right, not just a resource to be managed.
Beautifully put. Ensuring everyone has access to this today and tomorrow, that's what matters.
This has been a deep dive indeed. Learned a ton, and I hope our listeners have too. From the nitty-gritty of pumps and pipes to the big picture of community, politics, climate. It's complex, no doubt. But what shines through is that there is hope. We can tackle this.
Absolutely. By learning from the successes and even the failures, by working together, there's a path forward.
To a more water-secure future for everyone. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. Big thanks to our expert for breaking it all down for us, and to you, our listeners, for joining us. If this sparked your curiosity, check out the show notes for a link to the full study. It's a fascinating read. Until next time, keep exploring.